Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Dynasty Dudes Hangout with myself, Nathan Powell, and my friend Russell Clay. How's it going tonight, Russell?
Good. I'm rocking my retro Draft Street T-shirt that I won back in the day in I don't know 2012 maybe. And
That's some back in the day DFS right there.
yeah, isn't it? I feel proud. Is this like a collector's item now?
It might be worth like $3,000 in 2 years, if my calculations are correct.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna throw it on eBay in a few years. But yeah, we got a good show tonight. I'm excited. Nathan may throw up. We're not sure.
Yeah, it's. I'd say about if you're betting at home, I'd say it's probably 1-to-1 even odds. So let us know if you're gambling at home with your spouse, friend, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
So we're gonna go into.
if you have any prop bets going, they're live now.
All right. We're going to go into the news and notes, and some offensive coordinators were hired because a lot of the head coaches were defensive head coaches, so that made a lot of us dynasty offensive based thinkers. All right, who's going to be the offensive coordinators? Dirk Cutter from the Atlanta Falcons went to Tampa, but the one I want to talk about right now is Greg Olson from the Oakland Raiders went to the Jags. And as a huge Allen Robinson and Marquise Lee fan, I just wanted to bang my head against the wall several times repeatedly because from all of the Raiders fans that I follow, Greg Olson is an extremely boring, repetitive, not risk-taking offensive coordinator, which is what you want in an offensive coordinator. Don't you agree, Russell?
Yeah, but more importantly, how does Cam Newton feel? He's got to be pissed right now.
Because he lost his second best receiver.
No, I actually am not too educated on Greg Olson, but I'd imagine based on how the Raiders played offense this year, they're very conservative and run-based. So if that's his style, that's probably not good. It might actually be good for Bortles' progression and how he progresses through his second year. Because I mean, even if you have all the weapons in the world, if you're not an NFL quarterback, you're not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know. I kind of think that if you are an NFL quarterback, it's better to see the risk you can take than succeed with than to not. But I mean, it teaches on whatever it is. And the biggest story on the Twitter, and maybe just on the Twitter, no one else really cares about it, is Deflate Gate, the deflating of the Patriots footballs. I guess we're going to talk about this for a short little second. For me, I honestly don't really have any. I mean, I'm guessing Russell doesn't either, from the look on his face. But
I
I don't
mean,
have any sort of no.
I'm from Massachusetts, and it is just absolutely nauseating to listen to the sports radio and just everyone's opinion. I mean, it's all over Twitter. That's what everybody's talking about, and I just don't care. What is? I just don't see why this is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, like I could see if it's a big deal if there was like a threat of like the Patriots like having to replay the game or having to forfeit the game or whatever it is. But I really think that the chances of something like that happening are slim to none. So other than that, let's just let the league handle it, and we'll see what the punishment is. Other than that, so we'll move on to Mike Wallace. The Dolphins. The postseason talk has been that they're not too happy with him and his contract. So there's a good chance he would walk, or not walk, but get cut. Um, just looking at from Dolphins to free agent, do you think that him leaving the franchise would be good or bad for his stock, Russell?
I think it could potentially be great because he's been sort of a wide receiver three in a role that he isn't. The last few years in Miami, the role he's playing is not what he is. It's almost like they're trying to make him into a possession receiver, and that is the opposite of Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace is all about the deep ball, and sort of beating the defense and using that speed. And as I mentioned, Dallas, obviously it's not going to happen with all the cap issues they have, but like if he could fit on a team like that, where he could be the second receiver and just sort of go deep all day and work those deep routes and stuff like that, I think he could be awesome. I think his ball skills are undervalued. He's made some really good catches. He's just
Yeah,
inconsistent.
yeah, I agree. And not having to face a number one receiver or Revis twice a year, that'd be good for Wallace if he can be a consistent number two with a deep threat consistently. I think that's the good Mike Wallace role.
Right.
And he's just not able to fill that in Miami when there's no one else. I mean Jarvis Landry, but he's not drawing too much coverage away from Wallace. So yeah, I mean I'm sure that'll be something we'll talk about as we get more into the season. But yeah, I mean it's definitely something to follow if you're a Mike Wallace fan or some guy who might be looking to
Absolutely.
buy
Because
low
I
on Mike
mean,
Wallace.
if they cut him, he's a potentially great buy low depending on where he goes. I mean, there's always teams that need deep threats. So if someone could definitely use him. Bunch of
Yeah.
teams.
According to one of my favorite reporters from ESPN, Woody Page, he
Oh
reported yesterday
Jesus.
to I love Woody Page so much. But he reported to Roto World yesterday. I mean, he reported and Roto World reciprocated that Peyton's back in Denver. So this is great news for Emmanuel Sanders, Demarius Thomas, Julius Thomas. I still don't think he's back in Denver because of the price tag, but it's good news for all Peyton assets, C.J. Anderson and the like. So are we? I mean, I know that one reporter's report isn't like God or whatever, but is this good news for the Peyton assets that Woody Page is reporting that Peyton is back for sure?
Guys like Peyton Manning are gonna have to get dragged off. That's sort of how I feel. Sort of what happened with Brett Favre. Like he's just gonna have to get knocked out to leave. Like and this was bad. This playoffs, like this was a bad, not embarrassing moment in Peyton's career, but he doesn't want this to happen again. But I mean, he's got such a passion for the game, and I don't know if that's gonna chill out. Like that's all he's done his entire life is play football, and finally quitting, I don't know if it's nearly as easy as we see it. Because like obviously we see his skills have diminished, but what's in his head? He's always gonna
Yeah,
think he can do it.
yeah, and he did have like that torn quad the last like 6 weeks of the season, and so it's tough to judge like where his actual skills are today versus his age or whatever. And it's similar to the Brett Favre situation, and that I can only remember, I was a kid at this time, but the NFC Championship game where pretty much like his leg got torn apart by the Saints, and like you could see like the pictures post the game where it was like all purple and stuff. It's like, oh, Brett Favre should retire, and he still ended up playing one more year in Minnesota, and then he realized, I'm done with this stuff.
Right.
But
So I mean, logically he would be done after this year, but who knows? And he's an all-time great, so it's not like they wouldn't bring him back. So
yeah.
you just kind of play it by ear, wait it out, and see
So
how it goes.
other than the crazy Twitter wars or scenarios that were going on, what stood out from last week's games in your mind?
Aaron Rodgers' legs are such a huge part of his game, and I mean, you could see him limited. I mean, I'd say pretty much 80% of his passing's there. But without those legs, because he's such a threat, he's so quick to see the lanes and like get those 5 to 10 yards rushing. And when he doesn't have that ability to run, it just cuts off a huge part of his game. And it was kind of sad to see because you kind of want to see in those playoff games guys like that at 100%, and he just clearly wasn't.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer. And as far as the Pats Colts game, other than the Deflate Gate, it wasn't really an entertaining game. And the Pats, I mean, Like for me, my preseason prediction at Sportable was Packers Colts. So that's what I was rooting for championship weekend, just because for the sake of preseason predictions. But I mean, honestly, I was pretty confident in the home teams coming out on top, and the Patriots showed that they were clearly the better team than Indianapolis, despite having deflated balls. But yeah, I mean, what I take away from that game is that LeGarrette Blount. I mean, I may be biased as a Bucks fan, but I'm never going to value LeGarrette Blount as a dynasty asset. But he's still going to be a thing. You know what I mean?
And this goes back to our bet with me and you versus Le'Veon. And obviously that looks idiotic now. But I just felt like Blount's a good running back. And I mean, I know you're obviously you're a hater at this point. Can we consider you a hater?
Okay. The reason why. Let me explain. Okay, first the bet was Blount versus Bell YPC minimum 100 carries. And honestly, they might have made it, and Russell might have owed me a MFL 10. I have to check after the hangout. But the reason why I was a hater was that during his time in Tampa and in Oregon, he was considered a goal line running back, and that was literally the worst thing he was at. It would be like a 3rd and 2 from the goal line, and he'd just stutter step and then get tackled at the 1. It's like, no, you're not a goal line running back because you don't run straight ahead. I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm an offensive line coach, but I can see that he wasn't a goal line back like he was supposed to be advertised to be.
Right, and much like Le'Veon, which a lot of us missed in our evaluation of him, and a lot of the metrics people saw before he became what he was that athleticism, that jumping ability, that like able to make cuts and able to like quickly go through them, and Blount has that, not on the same level, but he has that ability, and I mean, you've seen him jump over guys bunches of times, so he has that athleticism, maybe not the vision. Obviously, he's never going to be a feature back, but he's got some talent.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think this is just the Patriot system, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's not talentless, but like for me, if I'm looking at a running back, I'm looking at, can he ever be consistently fantasy relevant? Can he be a feature back? And I don't see check marks on either of those from Blount, partially because of the Patriot system, but also because I just haven't seen it from Blount recently, at least.
Now, has he not had consistent production because of his personality type or because of his talent?
It might be both.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we'll move on to Super Bowl week. Yeah, and anything to look for Dynasty owners?
Not really. I mean, my big guy was Paul Richardson, and he got a major injury. And I mean, all the people that were sort of doubting him going into the process last year, I mean, I can't say they were wrong. Because from the beginning of this process, they were all talking about how he's so small and how it would be tough to continue and be a great player at that height and weight, and because he's just so thin. And I mean, you look at a guy like Deshaun Jackson, he can do it, but that's rare, you know. And this is his second ACL, so I'm worried. I don't know that he'll make it back. But other than that, I don't really see much in terms of potential. Seems like guys have already reached their value. Russell Wilson, Rob Gronkowski. Edelman's interesting to me. I think he's going to sustain some value for the next few years, and he might be undervalued.
Yeah,
you know?
See, he signed a 4-year deal in 2 years ago, so he has 2 years left on a deal with New England. And he's not going away. Like, he's still going to get 90 to 95 catches, which is ridiculous value in PPR for a guy that really isn't being valued at all in Dynasty the last 2 years and even before that.
That's where I'm at with him. So it's like, he's not ever going to have that ceiling you're looking for, but he's pretty much plug and play every week, guaranteed wide receiver 2 to 3 numbers, especially with Brady. So I'm not against sort of valuing him and drafting him, you know?
Yeah. And as far as the game itself, I think that I'm going with Seattle for the game itself. I think that defense is just too ridiculous. Ever since Bobby Wagner came back, they literally haven't not stopped anyone. They've stopped everyone essentially, you know. And I don't think that Brady will get things going. And they have the cornerbacks to stop whatever corner. They have this cornerback to stop Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola, and the linebackers to stop Gronk. So as far as the game prediction, I'm going with the Seahawks. And as far as a dynasty, outlook prediction, there really isn't much that you haven't seen before. There's Gronk, there's Marshawn Lynch, or Russell Wilson.
Right.
But other than
That's
that,
what I
there's not
mean.
much
Yeah.
too exciting.
All the value's basically been realized on these two teams, other than the one guy who tore his ACL. So there's that.
Yeah. And just a quick notice. I'm not sure if FanDuel did it yet, but DraftKings, they did say that they're doing a Pro Bowl, Senior Bowl challenge. If you're playing DFS this weekend, I advise doing a very, very minimal percentage of your bankroll. It's a trap. There's not very much skill in betting who's going to have the best stats in the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl, really. So just avoid that at all costs. If you're a degenerate like me and don't mind entering one contest or another, like, do it, but just know that you're asking to have that be a waste of money, essentially.
Oh, and okay, before we get into this 2015 mock, did you go to the Shrine this week?
The Shrine game, yeah.
So how was it, and did you notice anybody stick out or anything? What'd you think?
It was horrifically awful.
Yeah.
It was very bad. I said this in my Shrine Bowl wrap-up for DLF. When the rookie is named the MVP of an All-Star game, you know that is a good sign for dynasty prospects, or it isn't. Mostly, it isn't a good sign for dynasty prospects. And I wrote up some of the guys that, not in the game itself, but as prospects in general. Zach Zenner, the guy that Scott Fish gave me the hat tip on, that he might be a thing this coming rookie draft season. And then Andre Davis, who also went to USF with me. And I like him a lot. I could just be being biased, but I think that he's a decent prospect, and I did write him up for ELF.
It's not a question of if you're being biased or not. You're clearly biased, but he could still be good.
Correct. Yeah, and eventually that'll be. I'm not sure if anyone has any advice of how to GIF articles and GIF things into articles. I sent it to our editor, and he hasn't said anything back to me yet. But anyways, I still need to figure that out.
I actually, USF did play Wisconsin this year, and I got to catch a game of him, and he does look pretty good. So he's not going to be a high round pick.
I don't think Andre Davis played that game.
He didn't?
I'm pretty sure Andre Davis was hurt that game, so I think you're making stuff up. But
I don't think so, dude. All right. Well,
while you're doing that, I just poured some Sprite. Where are we at in the Sprite bottle? All right. Well, we're doing this Sprite banana challenge, which I'm supposed to throw up. So hold on. Let me go and get some sort of chuck bucket.
You're right. Who did play that game then? Someone stuck out. Well, in the game against Wisconsin, they completed 8 passes. South Florida did.
Okay.
But they averaged 22 yards per. Hold on. I'm talking right now. Do you know who Kennard Swanson?
Yeah, he's a lovely guy.
Okay. Anyway. Back to you. All right, let's get this rolling.
Was Andre Davis in the game itself or no? Was I right?
No, he was not.
Yeah, I was pretty sure he was hurt. But so the Sprite banana challenge or whatever is that you're supposed to eat 2 bananas and then drink a liter of Sprite. And there's supposed to be something in the physics of it that ends up bad for your stomach and you explode. And so we'll see how this works. I'm hoping to actually finish a challenge for once because I think it's an embarrassment that we keep continuously fail on them. But we'll see how this goes.
I
So
did
I'm
not fail
getting.
last week. I finished my
What'd you
head
do
of
last
lettuce.
week?
Head of lettuce,
Oh,
baby.
congratulations! I'm very proud of you. So I guess Russell can talk some random dynasty while I eat these bananas. But I'm gonna do that, and maybe I'll start talking when I don't feel good. All right, ready, set, go.
All right, so these this rookie mock that we did, um, we started it on 115. It took us about 4 or 5 days, and throughout the mock, you sort of just it's always BPA, and I mean, based on your dynasty league, it might shift because some people might not go best player available. They might draft for need, which I would never ever suggest in a rookie draft. I don't care if you have 10 wide receivers and no running backs. If you think Amari Cooper's
The two bananas are gone.
really? Oh wow, okay. All eyes on you, baby.
Don't feel anything yet.
Oh, you're behind. Oh baby. Oh look at that man. Oh look at that man.
I don't get it. I haven't felt anything yet.
Drinking that Sprite by itself is enough.
All right, so pretty much this is a 1.25 liter bottle, and it's just about 0.25 liters. So we'll finish this.
All right,
Still not feeling anything.
it's fine. Just keep going. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you feel anything. You're a champion regardless, Nathan. In our eyes, at least. Oh, listen to that technique. You're like Kobayashi. And what's his name? Who's the American guy that's good at hot dog eating now? Johnny Appleseed.
Joey something. Joey.
Joey Chestnut. Dude, I love the Monopoly Man shirt. That's gorgeous.
Whew. I did it. Oh, holy moly.
No, finish
Joey
that
Chestnut.
finish that little bit.
The 1.25 Sprite. Oh, goodness. So when I was Googling about this challenge, it was saying that there isn't really anything scientific about the throwing up. It's just the fact that consuming that much of like food and liquid at the same time is supposed to make you throw up.
So you're just a baller. You're just a
Pretty
baller
much.
shot caller. All right, well, finish that up right now.
All right, so let's get. I will
Come on.
start talking about Gurley 1.01.
All right, well, Todd Gurley in the first ever developmental league I did. The first pick in that draft was Todd Gurley. That was in 2012, I believe. And I mean, you take a look at this guy. His freshman year, it was him and a guy by the name of Keith Marshall who were in a committee together. And I mean, just the first time I saw him, was against Florida. I did a scouting profile on him, and you could just see he just had generational ability. And when you see those types of guys, it's just instant. You just know. Like, all you have to do is see like 20 to 30 carries, and you know this guy has immense ability. that could potentially be a game changer like Adrian Peterson. And I mean, obviously, like in his freshman year, true freshman year, he was like an all everything for that Georgia offense, and he was returning punts for touchdowns, and he's like 6'1", 230. And ever since then, he just seemed like he projected to a Steven Jackson, Adrian Peterson type of player, and the last 2 years haven't really changed anything in my view of that. And um, he's just looked amazing every time he stepped out on the field. And I don't see any reason to change my view that he's a generational talent. So I know he had the ACL injury. I am not worrying about that in the least. I think he's the clear 1-1. He didn't go 1-1 in this, but for me, I don't care. I don't care what happens. I don't care if he goes in the third round
I thought he did.
of the. No, he went 1-2.
Oh, Melvin went first.
Yeah, but
Okay, so I'll get my comments on Gurley real quick. So
okay.
for me, he was the easy 1-1 before the ACL injury, and I was talking about with there's the constant argument with shelf life and RBs versus wide receivers and whatnot. And for me, with Gurley, I see before the ACL injury, I see a lock at a RB1 for the next 5 to 6 years, and I value that over just about whatever the wide receivers in this class can do for me. So I thought he was the easy 1-1. Then he has the ACL injury after he was suspended for the autographs or whatever. Comes back, I can't believe that if I was him, I wouldn't have agreed to come back. I would have been like, all right, nope, just gonna sit out and wait till I go to the NFL. But nope, he comes back, tears his ACL, and so now it's up in the air. And I think that the Gurley injury in itself kind of opens up a larger first tier. Do you agree with that line of thinking?
In most people's perception, yes, he's still a tier of his own at 1-1 for me, and nothing will change. And that's going to be a hard stance, and sometimes you have to do that in Dynasty because when you see something that really catches your eye, you have to stick with it until further notice. So that's where I'm at with him, and I mean, obviously there's always a chance the injury could change him forever, but this was his first major injury of his entire career, so most players at least get one. So I think he's worth the gamble for his talent.
All right, so he went 1-2. 1-1 was Melvin Gordon, and Melvin he averaged over 7.5 yards per carry in each year after his freshman year. Absolutely ridiculous. And one of the main concerns coming into his redshirt junior, no, just junior year. I don't know what it was.
No, redshirt junior year, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. So one of the main concerns coming into his redshirt junior year was he had never really caught any passes. But this year he caught 19. Do you think that kind of squashes those concerns, or you think those are still a thing, or what?
When you watch some of those catches, they were hands catches, you know? They were away from his body. He went up, got it. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't just like screens where he just let it hit his body and just started running from there. So it was legitimate catches. So there's definitely a small sample size, and I think he'll need some practice in that, but I have faith that it will translate. And I mean, again, I was ranting on Twitter about this earlier, but Melvin Gordon, I've been a Wisconsin fan since I was probably like 12 years old, and he's the best Wisconsin player I've ever seen. That includes J.J. Watt, that includes Russell Wilson, that includes Ron Dane, and I mean Monty Ball and all these other guys that put up ridiculous stats. I mean, he was just a ridiculous prospect from the beginning. And obviously I'm not saying he's better than what J.J. Watt became in the NFL, but at Wisconsin, this is the best player I've ever seen. So that's just some food for thought, I guess.
All right, so we'll move on to but by the way, this rookie draft was hosted by our friend Scott Fish, and a lot of these guys are industry guys, and some of them were just scouts followers, but definitely a lot in all of his mocks have a fair share of industry writers in them. So definitely some quality guys mocking, which is good for
Yeah,
analyzing them.
absolutely. Some quality stuff here.
All right, so 103, and for some reason on the Google Doc we have, I had Todd first, but I'm pretty sure these are all in order the way we'll talk about for the next couple minutes or whatever. So talk about Amari Cooper, and I'm not a big believer in the safe prospect thing, but I think he's one of the safer prospects in this draft, Amari Cooper. As far as I think he's pretty safely a high-end wide receiver two, maybe with a chance of wide receiver one production. Do you disagree with that, or what do you see with Amari Cooper?
Yeah, when I evaluate wide receivers, I try to look at them in ranges. So like, where would I see Amari Cooper as a prospect? Sort of, what's his ceiling as a player? And I could see him as sort of that 8 to 12 range, 8 to 15 range, like Alshon Jeffrey. Like I look at him as an equally talent to that type of guy. So I do not see an elite talent, but I think he has a legitimate skill set, and in a good situation, I think he could be a high-end wide receiver one. So, as you said, I mean, he's got everything already. He just doesn't have the elite upside that some other guys do. But he's a great pick there. So that's my top three. I don't see anyone else getting close to there. I know a lot of people like Devontae Parker. I don't see him anywhere close to those three. You know?
Yeah, and then Parker, he did go 104 in this mock, and it's interesting because I've seen quite a few people mock a possible Teddy reunion with the Vikings picking it like 11 or something, picking Devontae Parker, and I think that would definitely be good for Parker's value. A, because I think Teddy's a really good quarterback, and B, because it's just one of those things that you know Parker would be his developmental like blanket of sorts as Teddy becomes a better quarterback.
Yeah, and a lot of people have become infatuated with Devontae Parker, and I mean some have been for a while now. I just don't. I guess I just don't see what everyone's so excited about. And maybe I have to look deeper into this, and maybe I'm missing something, but I guess I just don't see that special player that everyone else is sort of talking about, you know? Like,
Yeah,
what do
I
you
mean,
think?
for me, I see like, I mean, I've me and several other people have called him like a poor man's AJ Green. Like, he's not quite as tall, not quite as heavy, but like he is like does have the frame similar to an AJ Green, and I don't think he has quite the upside as AJ, obviously, because I think AJ's top three receiver in the NFL. But I think I see him similar to that. He has a high YPC in college, not quite the PPR machine that Cooper is, but I definitely think that Parker is a solid 104 there.
hmm Okay, so like a low end AJ Green, sort of,
Yeah.
at his ceiling, yeah. Okay, I mean, that makes sense. I get it, but I will not be as high on him as most people. I probably won't end up with any shares of him when it's all said and done. Um,
Yeah.
so so 1-5 is a very interesting player. Um, Dorial Green Beckham from Missouri, the wide receiver. I mean, nobody would ever question his height, his weight, his I guess ability, but we're basically year 3 or 4 into this. Um, Off the field issues really get in the way now, you know? And is it worth using a high pick on a guy like that?
Yeah, I mean, my current stance on it is that I'm scared to death to pass on him, but I'm also scared to death to take him. So it's kind of one of those guys that like I'll take in 1 to 2 leagues and just let everyone else take on the risk in other leagues, just so I can not be completely out of it, but also not be completely into it. You get that kind of thinking.
Yeah, so you're hedging yourself basically.
Yeah,
Would you say you're hedging yourself in the direction towards him or against him?
against him, just because
Against him,
I've been
yeah.
burned by Gordon and Blackman,
Yeah.
and it's like it kills your roster so much when you spend a top
So
five rookie pick.
it just crushes it because you have like a top five dynasty receiver and then it's just gone. And
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to have a short leash from the very beginning because teams are going to fully scout him. They're going to get into his brain. They're going to get into his life and figure everything out about him. And if they see red flags, they're going to be all over him. So I don't know.
yeah, and like I mean, not that this really said much for Justin Blackman or Gordon really, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the NFL draft. Like if a team like the Seahawks pick him at the end of the first round or something like that, like I'll have a little more confidence to take him. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, to the same extent, I'm still worried regardless. Whoever takes him, I don't think one franchise is going to fix a huge character problem.
Right. I mean, the best example would be Aaron Hernandez with the Patriots, where he was doing amazing, and then next thing you know, he's. I mean, 2 years ago, Aaron Hernandez was like a top three dynasty tight end, and then he
Yeah,
was just in jail for murder.
yeah, it was so nuts.
Like he was literally on fantasy dynasty rosters, and then he committed murders, and it's just like, can we really? How much do you really want to put into these guys now? Because nothing gets swept under the rug anymore. Too much media around.
Yeah, and so
And
next on the rookie draft order at 106 was Devin Funchess. Honestly, he's one of the more interesting prospects for me because he's big, he's kind of fast, and it'll be
athletic,
interesting to watch him across the process because I don't think he's a complete receiver, and which is why some people think he's going to be playing tight end in the next level. But the one thing is that he is 20 years old. He's not 23 like Kelvin Benjamin was coming out, so he does have some time to develop. Um, but what are your thoughts on Funches coming into the process?
and I mean, this is one of the times where you have to be honest with yourself, and it's like I've tracked Funches since he was a tight end, but I still really don't have a great read on what he is, you know? And like you got to be honest with yourself if you don't, and then you just got to start building perspective, you know? Cuz like I don't know how he would possibly like if it's good or bad how he's going to translate to the next level. I think he has some good ball skills and athleticism, but at the same time he did nothing this year at receiver, you know? And
Yeah, I mean the thing is that like while college stats can be inflated or maybe overestimated by some people, it still matters. Like if you weren't a great college football player, the odds of you being a really good
yeah,
NFL player are kind of slim.
absolutely. And I mean, you can look at the numbers. I mean, any player that becomes a star in the NFL dominated college. Like either on the small level or on the big level. They all dominated college. No question. Unless they were like an Antonio Gates where they didn't even play football. You know what I mean? Or Jimmy Graham, but other than that, so I don't know. And he was transitioning, so it's like how much can you knock him? So he's tough. I don't really have a good read right now.
Yeah. Next at 107 was T.J. Yeldon, and this is Alabama running backs seem to get talked about from their freshman year, and Yeldon was no exception. And for me, like this kind of gets talked about every year since T. Rich, and I'm starting to think this might have just been a T. Rich thing. But do you think that Alabama wears down their players at all, or is that just sort of like a myth type thing?
It's so tough to know with limited information, but I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that documentary on their strength and fitness coach, but it is hysterical. I'll post it after we're done here. But basically, this guy is just a lunatic, and he's just yelling the entire time in like a positive manner, but you can just tell how intense being at that program is. And Nick Saban gets 100% out of all of his prospects, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
At the college level.
I think Yeldon's a good prospect. I don't think he's a great prospect, but I think he could be a starting running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I'm not sure he's top 10 dynasty rookie pick type of guy, but he's gonna be what he's gonna be. You know, he's not. I don't know. He's just not great, but he's not bad either. You know, as long as he gets to a decent situation, I think he's gonna be okay.
yeah, and he's good at receiving the ball too, so that's an advantage for a bigger guy, or not a bigger guy, but a solidly built guy. You know, that's a big advantage if he can receive the ball. So get him out on the field a little more. A
By
lot
the
of these
way,
running backs. Yeah.
when I was chugging that Sprite and saying it was so easy, um, my stomach is like boiling right now. It's
Oh,
not
is
fun.
it like potential eruption?
I mean, like it's not like coming or anything, but like, it doesn't feel good right now.
Oh, just like heartburn.
Yeah.
Uh,
Whew.
yeah, I mean, you drank a lot of Sprite for a small amount of time, so that's gonna be brutal.
With the bananas, yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. All right. So, Duke Johnson, tell me why I shouldn't be worried about concussions.
No, I'm not gonna tell you that. I'm just gonna say I'm diving in. I'm in on Duke Johnson this year, and I was talking about it on Twitter earlier. And as a dynasty owner and as sort of a player evaluator, you have to become aware of your biases. And one thing I've noticed about myself is that I love small speed guys who obviously they usually run with injury concerns and stuff like that, but I just love to see that elite athleticism. The guys that can just blow away defenders and just turn them around, and at the college level, some defenders just don't have a chance. And I love seeing those guys, and Duke Johnson is one of those players. I mean, most of those guys do not bust because of talent. They bust because they can't stay on the field. So that's definitely a concern with Duke Johnson. I've heard plenty of people say he was always dinged up and always getting hurt and always sitting out plays because he was getting banged up on the field. So that's definitely a big red flag for him. But the upside is very, very appealing to me. So that's why I took him at
Yeah.
1.8.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
The upside is there, but some of these wide receivers that we'll talk about in the next couple picks, I think I'd rather take the risk at the wide receiver position just simply because of the upside of the dynasty format. So the next pick was Kevin White, and it's interesting because I don't know. I was kind of a big fan of Kevin White until I heard rumblings that he might not be as big as what West Virginia measurement said he was. Like West Virginia has him at like 6'3", 212. And some
yeah, if he's 6'1", that changes everything for me.
yeah, and more importantly, if he's like 200, 195, like he's nowhere near the prospect that I think he is. But I mean, he didn't.
He
Maybe
didn't
this
go to
is
the
some
Senior
weird.
Bowl,
Yeah, which just makes it
so
even more interesting.
and is he going to the combine? He's going to the
He has
combine,
to.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And even with the weigh-ins, even if it is, if even if he's as great as we imagine with the 6'3", 212, you know, he's still a high variance prospect because a lot of the
Under
film guys
one.
say like he's he's really good at one or two things, but his game is missing a lot of other things. At least that's what I've heard some guys talk about. Is that something that you've seen on film, Russell?
Um, when I watch him, I see a physically imposing guy, and based on what I know from his stats and what they said his height and weight were, he looks the part. And I mean, if I can get a 6'3" guy that's really physical, he doesn't have great speed, but those guys are valuable at the next level. And he looks like he has pretty good ball skills. I mean, maybe he's a little inconsistent, but for the most part, I'm in on him. Like, he was my number 2 guy. But if what you were talking about is true, I'd definitely be changing my view, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any concrete evidence. I just saw like one or two guys talking about how he might not be as big as we thought he was.
Right.
So,
And I mean, most of these guys, especially the receivers, get overhyped and weighted in college by their teams on purpose, you know, to sort of hype them up. That's a real thing. So, look out for that. I mean, be aware. He's a good prospect either way, but it definitely takes some of the shine off if he's not 6'3", you know?
yeah. All right, so next off the board was another big guy, Jalen Strong, and he had just 2 monstrous years the last 2 years at Arizona State. He's definitely a guy I like with the size, the speed, and the height. So do you have any initial thoughts on Jalen Strong?
Yeah, I did a player profile on him, and I went in loving him, and I came out slightly disappointed. And this obviously I was evaluating his the year before, but I watched a few of his games this year, and I didn't really see much of a change. He's sort of he's good. Like, he's gonna be a good receiver. Like, other than Cooper, I'd say he's one of the safest prospects in the draft. But he's just not fast. And he goes down easy on first contact after the catch. For a bigger guy, he goes down really easy, and he's not fast. So you know how Alshon, he sort of has Alshon-ish ball skills without the Alshon athleticism. So I kind of compared him to Roy. Huh?
So Justin Hunter with better hands.
I compared him to Roy Williams, the old Lions receiver, what he became. Yeah. And that's sort of what I see him as, which isn't bad. Like, that's a good NFL receiver, but I don't think he has the upside that a lot of people think he does.
I can see that. So next off the board was Jay Ajayi. This guy that I've had my eye on for the last couple of years, and I'm a big fan. He's probably my RB3 in this class. I see him as a nice downhill runner, and I see him as a high floor prospect regardless of landing spot. And if he gets in the right spot, I think he has the ceiling to be. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of weird to have like your ceiling and your actual evaluation as RB3 in this class. But like RB3 in this class is no joke when you have Melvin and Gurley as 1-2. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you, Le'Veon Bell had a great impact on me, because I'll never count somebody out now. You know what I mean? And initially, I wasn't as high on Ajayi as everyone else was, but I sort of like started listening to how other people sort of were looking at him, and sort of Matt Harmon started talking about him and evaluating him, and a bunch of NFL.com guys were starting to evaluate him, and I guess I'm looking at him like, I'm not high on him, but I think there might be something there anyway. So, like, from my evaluation, I didn't really get the player people are seeing, but that doesn't mean I'm right. You know what I mean? So I think he could be a good player. Yeah. So I'm not that high on him, but I like him there. In the right spot, I think he could blow up. I like the next guy better.
Okay, you like the next guy better. I'll let you talk about Tevin Coleman for a second. I gotta use the restroom.
Oh, baby. Okay, so Tevin Coleman, this was his junior year his last year, he really blew up last year, but no one really paid attention because he went to Indiana. Um, but he had pretty much the same efficiency as this year. It was just a lot more volume, and I don't know. A lot of the film guys are starting to evaluate him and not like him, but I'm a fan. I think he could be really good in the right system. I think he's sort of he's got a lot to work with. I think he's got a skill set that can be developed in the NFL, and if the right team gets a hold of him, I think he could be a potential like Pro Bowl running back. And as I said, like on Twitter recently, I think there's 9 NFL starting running backs in this class. So by me saying I don't like Jay Ajayi, comparatively to say a Tevin Coleman is not an insult. It's just saying I'm not as high on him as everybody else, you know? And Nathan is dying currently. I can't imagine drinking that much Sprite.
I'll tell you what, that 1 liter of Sprite's got to go somewhere.
How is drinking that much Sprite? That would hurt my throat so much.
Honestly, it's just my stomach. That was not fun. But I didn't throw up, though, so I'm pretty proud, to be honest.
All right, talk about semi-coats for a second before you say anything.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where Russell's going. But Sammy Coates, I see him as one of those high upside, low floor guys. He didn't really have the big numbers at Auburn, but he did hover around 20 YPC all 3 years of college. He's a big play guy if he hands. Stephen Hill, if you will. But, I mean, obviously, he's not Stephen Hill. So, yeah, I mean, I like Sammy Coates, but he's definitely one of those guys where when you're taking your draft pick, you have to realize, okay, this guy could amount to nothing. And you don't really want those type of picks in the late first, even the early second, which is where Coates is going to go. So, I mean, you just have to be aware of a possible result of nothing happening. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion on Sammy Coates. And Russell's coming back, so maybe he'll give his opinion on Coates. Russell, what's your opinion on Coates, if you didn't give it already?
I think he's going to be way overdrafted based on what he's done. I think he's a physical
That's kind of what I just said.
Yeah, I don't know. I am not buying. Because, I mean, I could see him ending up being a late first-round pick. I really could. And that's not that's just not ideal for a rookie draft. Because for a dynasty draft, he's going to take a while to develop. He's not going to be a year one. Like, I hear a lot of Torrey Smith comparisons. No. He's not going to be Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith had, like... No. And, like, Torrey Smith came in year one, and he was an effective player for the Ravens. And I just don't see that for Sammy Coates. He's like a developmental piece that you take a chance on. But, I mean, based on where all the big guys are sort of evaluating him, and Devin Smith is another one, where I just think they're way overvaluing the athleticism, and they're not looking at the receiver itself. But
yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I see it, where you just have to, I mean, after I've been burned by Cordell Patterson, I'm starting to look at a possible floor for wide receivers when I'm evaluating them, and Coach just has that low floor that just isn't that appetizing. Yes, he has the speed, and he has the height, and he has the YPC, but he doesn't have the hands, and he's not quite the receiver yet.
Right. So, I mean, we're not saying he couldn't be amazing, but I'd say 7 out of 10 times he's not going to become nearly what you want him to be.
Yeah.
But our next guy.
And then we'll move on to
Yeah. Max Williams.
He's literally the only guy that I'm considering drafting in most dynasty leagues at the tight end position. And it's Max Williams, big guy, and he's still 20 years old, so he's a really young guy. and he has hovering around a 15, 16 yards per catch for a tight end, which is pretty solid. I like
Yeah.
Max Williams, and I think that this is right around where he should go in the early second round of dynasty drafts.
Oh man, he gets me excited. And I mean, um, who knows where he goes? Tight end is always sort of dependent on where they go, but he's a really good talent. And
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, if he's going to go in the second round of rookie drafts, that is a great spot for him. He could be the value of the year if he ends up in the second round for ADP.
yeah, I mean, like I don't think he goes like top 12 in the NFL draft like Ebron did, but I think he's better than Eric Ebron.
Right. You think he's better?
Yeah.
I think he's right around
Yeah,
the same range.
I mean,
Actually, you know
Ebron
what?
was young also, so I mean,
I actually might. I think I might like Max Williams a little better right now, based on what we know.
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, he's been
Williams
really
has the better
impressive.
like red zone for me.
Yeah.
Uh, Ebron never flashed me, but that's beside the point in this discussion. All right, so
It
we
is.
both like Max Williams. He's about a solid pick in the late first, early second.
Yeah.
Um, so next off the board was Amir Abdullah. This was my selection, and Abdullah, I'm a fan. He kind of reminds me of a Geo. He had 20 plus catches in his last 3 years of college. He's never going to be, your Steven Jackson workhorse running back. He's like 5'9". But I could definitely see him being like a solid fantasy RB2 in the PPR formats. So I think it's definitely a guy to keep an eye on early in the mid-second round. Is that sort of how you see him, or how you see him,
And
Russell?
and that's what you have to do with this class, because I mean, any other year, Amir Abdullah would be what, top 3 to 5 guy at least, if not higher,
Yeah,
you know.
at
And
running back at least.
yeah, oh yeah, that's what I meant at running back. And it's not that he's not a great running back. I mean, he's a good prospect. It's just that there's so many other guys ahead of him, or that will be evaluated ahead of him, that he's going to be a great value in that second round, especially depending on where the team goes. If he goes to a good offensive coordinator that can sort of work to his strengths, I think he could be a really good value.
Yeah. So the next two quarterbacks were
Nathan, what
the
do you think
first two
about?
quarterbacks.
Hold on. What do you think about doing like 18 picks and then picking it up next week?
Yeah, where are we at right now?
We're at
What
15.
pick are we at right now?
15. Now
Okay, yeah, that
16.
works.
Yeah.
We'll we'll stop it. We'll stop at Diggs. Diggs. All right. So now
Diggs?
that we've been
Okay.
interrupted, but yeah.
Yeah, that was my fault, but
Okay.
whatever. Yeah. Okay.
All
Continue.
right. So we've got back to back a pair of quarterbacks, and it's so kind of tough to judge rookie quarterbacks and quarterbacks in the one quarterback format. And for me, Jameis went first, and Mariota was followed up. At this point, I think they're both a little overdrafted at that point. I'm not too into drafting unproven quarterbacks that early. I think that it's a lot easier to acquire more proven, decent quarterbacks. You know what I mean? And in one quarterback leagues, I literally have two different stances in one quarterback and two QB. Like in two QB Superflex, Mariota, Winston are my top two prospects pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, you're
But in
probably
one
taking them 1-2 in a 2 QB league. You just have to. It's so scarce.
but
But
in one QB, it's like okay, maybe the late second, early third. But other than that, there's still plenty of prospects in the early to mid second where I'm not taking a Jameis or a Mariota. I think that both of them have a shot at getting in a really good situation with a Mike Evans combination
that's
or
what I'm saying.
a
Nathan, if one of them goes to Tampa, like that is an elite fantasy situation for me, you know. So
yeah.
I guess we just don't know yet. So that's what you're saying. Once we
I
know
mean,
if one of
yeah.
those
I
guys
mean,
goes
and
to
obviously,
Tampa,
like,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. You got it.
I just mean once we find out if one of those guys goes to Tampa, I'm gonna love whoever that is. And I mean, I think those two are pretty much interchangeable for me, fantasy wise. I think you probably don't want Jameis Winston leading your franchise, but I mean, in a fantasy situation, I don't have that much invested. So, if either one goes to Tampa, I'll be really really in on either. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that like they're interchangeable as QB1, QB2 in fantasy right now. But if one of them goes to Tampa, I think that they kind of separate themselves as QB1 at that point.
Right.
All right, so after the two quarterbacks goes Javoris Allen of South Carolina. Honestly, I've never really been a huge fan of Allen. I think that this is where the running backs start to drop off a little bit.
Yeah. Big time.
Is that kind of what you see?
Yeah, I mean, I like Mike Davis. I think he's still in that tier with Abdullah, but Javorius Allen, he's just really really old. And I mean, we've seen running backs come out of nowhere from every situation, but I don't know. He's an all right talent, but I don't see enough to sort of overcome that age. Especially in this
How old is he?
class. Maybe I think he's 24 already.
Oh, then no, there's no way. There's
Yeah,
no way a 24-year-old running back is getting on my teams.
yeah. So like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on age, and there's a variety of reasons
yeah,
why age is really important.
he's going to be 24 by the time the season starts. So I don't know.
Yeah, and just a quick go over of why age is important. I mean, just the obvious reason, like if a running back's 24, most running backs are done by like age 28. So you got like 4 seasons of quality work. But also the thing that age shows you is like if like Amari Cooper, his freshman year of like 19 years old, he was dominating the SEC. So that shows how good he is and how much better he's going to get. But if you have a 21-year-old running back in Javoris Allen dominating the Pac-12, it's like it's not as impressive. You know what I mean?
Right, and when you look at a development of a human being in general, like someone at 19, a 19-year-old body is much different than a 24-year-old body. You know, and like John Moore at Rotoviz does a lot of work on like age factored in, like sort of players and like how that works. And I think there's really something to it because when you look at the elite receivers that came along, all of them were young when they sort of hit. All of them were 18 or 19 um, when they broke into the major conferences, and they just dominated from day one. So
Yeah, and it's
hopefully
obviously not foolproof because Benjamin he had his first like good year when he was 22 and played in the NFL his rookie year at 23. So I mean, it's not like it's the end all be all, but it's definitely a good sign of who has a shot at being elite.
right, right. And I mean, again, we try to focus on nothing being black and white. Nothing's right or wrong. There's a lot of gray area, but when you start to look at the percentages and like what players and height and weight and yards and touchdowns, there are some trends that sort of tell you and indicate future production.
All right, so we'll cover these last two players. You were talking about Mike Davis a little earlier. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that sort of hit a slump this year and didn't he had a bunch of injuries and didn't sort of produce the way people wanted. But coming into the year, and that's why I feel like it's important to follow the process. Some people were saying he was better than Gurley, and I mean, I wasn't obviously one of those people, but if someone can have a year where people are talking about him in a semi-elite category, that's something to pay attention to, even if you didn't like him initially. So last year I didn't like Mike Davis, but now I'm sort of taking a closer look.
Yeah,
That's my
and
mind.
from what I've seen from people I've talked to, he does a lot of things well. He hasn't like shown like huge burst or huge speed or anything, but he's showing like he's capable of doing a lot of things, just not great at one specific thing.
Right. And I mean, he's not going to be Todd Gurley, but I think
Yeah.
could be a solid player.
All right, and we'll wrap up the show as far as the prospects with one of your guys, and I'm not surprised that you like a small receiver, but Justin Hardy, he measured in at the Senior Bowl at 5'10", 190, and that kind of scared the bejesus out of me and away from him as a prospect. Um, but what are your thoughts on Justin Hardy?
Yeah, but those hands, though. 10.5 inch hands.
Beautiful.
Any thoughts on those? Those
You know
mitts?
what they say about big hands?
What do they say about big hands, Nathan? All right.
You need big gloves.
No, and I understand that, and this is another case of the college sort of um, exaggerating what the player was. Because I mean, I don't know. I think he weighed in at 190, so that was accurate. But they basically gave him 2 extra inches at his college. So I love his talent. I love his ability to go up and get it. I mean, he's the all-time leading receiver in catches for college football. So I mean, he's 22 or 23. He at East Carolina, he was a walk-on his freshman year. There's no rivals page for him. No rivals or scouts page. He literally was a walk-on. Like he wasn't on the radar at all. And like to come from that to become like the all-time leading receiver, like you got to have some crazy work ethic. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know his personality type, but um, I definitely think there's something there.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean everything I've seen from draft Twitter from the Senior Bowl, he's flashed a lot at Senior Bowl practice. So what 1 week of practice shows as far as prospect, I have no idea. But the Senior Bowl seems to like him as far as his on the field prospects. So I mean, he's definitely a guy to monitor. He's not really my taste at all, but I mean, I think that he can be a decent slot receiver at the next level.
there you go, Nathan. I'll get you to like slot receivers eventually. One
I
day.
liked
That's my
Marquise Lee.
goal.
Once upon a time, I liked Marquise Lee. So
All right. So I think my goal one day is to get you to like a slot receiver and just like really like him. Just like get in on him. Yeah. That won't
all
happen
right,
for a
so
few
that
years,
covers
but
that covers this rookie draft portion of the hangout. Is there anything else you'd like to cover tonight, or Russell, before we sign off?
I think we just loaded a bunch of information on people, so I think we're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight, and I'm glad I got my laptop working like we did last night. But just in case somehow you don't know, you can find me at Dynasty League Football. You can find me at Project Roto and at Sportable. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at NPowellFF. Where can they find you, Russell?
They can find me on Twitter at FF Russell Clay. I'm a writer for DynastyLeagueFootball.com. And if you guys want to help us out, we're going to post YouTube tomorrow. We're going to post this episode. You want to help us out, like and subscribe. And yeah, pretty much we're here to interact. If you ever have any questions, come and hit us up, and we'll gladly try to help you out.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for listening.
All right, we'll see you guys later.